First of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak here tonight to fellow alumni. I'm a Deakin graduate. This is my second degree. I did with Deakin about 16 years ago. But about 3 years ago, I got the opportunity to come and work for VCAMM, and that gave me a chance in my career to actually do something I'd thought about 16 years ago when I was finishing the MBA, and that was to work in a role where I could be investing in technology businesses and help them grow, help with their strategy. It was a thought that I had while I was doing or finishing off the MBA, and it was, I guess it was an interesting time for me because I was working at Holden, working as a product engineer, and I was basically looking for a chance to get a pay rise, so get an extra qualification. I thought that would work. But in doing the course, what it did was got me to think more about business, how business works, and how you make money out of IP and technology. So that sparked an interest. I left Holden and then spent 13 years going through a variety of different roles, not all of them leading in the right direction ultimately, but I certainly gave a lot of skills and got me to VCAMM where I am now. So what I'm going to do, picking up on Brad's talk, is to talk in a bit more detail about where VCAMM sits in the innovation landscape and what some of the opportunities might look like for Geelong. Last year we had a researcher in business from one of our other consortium partners, Swinburne University, who worked with us over the year and was looking to see, well, how does VCAMM's model fit with innovation in a manufacturing context, particularly our role in orchestrating an innovation network, and also looking at incubation. Now, Bert Verhoeven, who was a researcher, a very competent, very good researcher, is actually overseas at the moment presenting to some international peers on this very study. I'm going to go through just a few of the details from his report. There's a bit of a cook's overview, so it's not the sort of detail that Bert will go through, but there's three main concepts which I think are relevant. One is open innovation, which we've all heard lots about, the concept of network orchestration, and then a bit more on incubation. So firstly, looking at open innovation, topic of the month. I mean, just about every organisation and consultant is now talking about open innovation. They've all got different slants on it, different views on it. It is important, and it's being driven by the rate of change of technology. So no organisation now has the capability of doing everything themselves. They have to tap into external expertise and capabilities. So how do you do that? There's a good example of a firm that didn't have enough resources to keep up with their demand for organic growth, and it was a little company called Procter & Gamble. They're one of the largest companies in the world. They got a turnover of $6 billion or something, and they could not, with 2,000 to 3,000 people working in product development, they could not keep up with the demands of their shareholders to generate the growth in new products and products and brands and stuff to put on supermarket shelves. What they decided to do about 10 years ago was implement an open innovation system, and that was a complete turnaround from what they were doing. So it was a different culture, it was a different management organisation, it was a whole different system for operating. Part of it was creating a web page where they put their opportunities online and go out fishing to see who's got solutions that might actually work for our products. A great example of this, which Bert is in his presentation, is Pringles chips. The marketing guys came along with an idea: why don't we print some cartoon characters onto the chips? You know, God knows, kids don't eat enough fatty, salty food, so anything that gets them to eat more is clearly going to work for us and Procter & Gamble. So the challenge was, the market opportunity was there. How do they get it to the market soon? If they did it the traditional method, they'd spend about 3 years. They'd have to work with a supplier and develop a process and prove it out. For edible links and everything to work with a cooked food. Certainly a bit of a challenge. So what they did was they put it on their Connect and Develop website, and they went around looking to see who would come up with some ideas. And what they found was there was a baker in a small shop in Bologna in Italy who actually worked out how to print on bagels. Don't know why he would print on bagels, but he'd worked out how to do it. He did a deal with Procter & Gamble. He did very, very well out of it, and Procter & Gamble got this onto the market within about 6 months. So they hit the market with the idea while it was still hot and fresh. Now, they had plenty of success with it. As you saw in the previous slide, if you're just looking at some of the figures, their innovation output and their growth has kept up with demand. And there's been plenty of other companies that have done well out of this process also. But the key is, if you don't do it right, it can also be a very costly exercise in failure. Because it ultimately comes down to learning how to collaborate. It's a different way of doing business, a different way of operating. So firms, to keep up, need to do open innovation, and they need to know how to work with other firms and other organisations and manage the IP around it. And that brings us to what VCAMM does. As Brad pointed out, for about 10 years, our focus has been on helping companies to collaborate and to access IP. So this is clearly a space that we operate in. The concept of network orchestration basically comes down to how do intermediaries, such as VCAMM, assist organisations, firms, particularly multi-organisation collaborations, achieve their outcomes. There's some interesting quotes there, so I'll leave that slide up for a minute so you can read through it. You know, as VCAMM's found, you know, there is definitely a role for intermediaries, but it's not just going out there and winging it and trying to make it work. I mean, you know, we've found out sometimes the hard way that you actually need to have some process and structure in place, and we've been developing that over the years. What our researcher was able to do was actually to put a bit of clarity around that. What are the actual processes that we use in solving these collaborations to make sure all the parties get value out of a growing pie? I'm not going to go through these in detail, but they are things such as being a fresh pair of eyes to help firms see the opportunities that might not be apparent, you know, when you're right up there at the coal face. It can be managing fairness and collaborative deals. I mean, everyone's got stories about trying to work with a research organisation, and the first thing they complain about is the IP. Well, this is bread and butter for VCAMM. It's sorting out a deal where the university gets to continue to teach and research in the field of the project, and the company gets the access to the IP in their product without fear of it being handed out to a competitor. You know, it's not a difficult problem to solve, but it just takes an independent person to help broker these deals. It can be maintaining the network over time. Getting a company to come on the first time and work with another company for the first time, and a research organisation for the first time, and a client for the first time, or a government. There's a whole lot of the effort is spent in actually just building the relationship. If you can keep these relationships going in a dynamic network and keep the communications going and get people used to working with each other, by the time you do the third or the fourth project, it becomes a lot more productive and you get a lot more success out of it. So that's very important. The other thing is keeping commercial coherence, making sure that the great ideas aren't pursued just because they're great ideas, that they're technically interesting and clever. They've got to actually lead to a market outcome. There's got to be someone that actually wants to pay for this, and a good reason for them to actually want to buy this as opposed to something else. So these are the types of things that we do. And that brings me to the final concept, is incubation. And how does this relate? Well, we see it as a manifestation of the open innovation and the network orchestration processes. It's putting it in a concentrated environment, like a mini concentration camp, you know, where you can actually get the focus on the network processes and the interactions, as well as bring in the associated services and resources that are needed.